We've decided, Mother. The Seaview Legacy Fund, it's far too valuable to sit idle in your account. That was the line. That was the phrase that landed on my freshly polished mahogany table, not like a polite suggestion, but like a judge's gavel striking the final verdict. It's been weeks now, and I can still hear the clink of the fork hitting the porcelain as I nearly dropped my plate. Before I finish telling you how I finally used that money, and trust me, the look on my daughter's face was worth 1,000 sunrises. I've got a small request. Just stick with this old storyteller for a bit longer. If you've ever had to fight for what you earned, leave a comment below and tell me where you're reading from. It's a comfort to know I'm not the only one who's had to teach a grown-up lesson. I am Elara Quinn, and I turned 76 this past spring. People tell me I have the energy of a woman 20 years younger. I tell them that's because I spent 50 of those years working double shifts, and the last 10 trying to outsmart a generation that thinks the Wi-Fi fairy pays the mortgage. The setting that Tuesday evening was perfect. Everything I'd spent my life building, warmth, aroma, and the chaotic symphony of a family gathering. I'd spent the day creating a meal that was less dinner, more declaration of love, Arthur's favorite pot roast, potatoes whipped smooth as satin, and a mushroom gravy so rich it needed its own velvet pillow. The house, my house, the one Arthur and I bought in 1975 with a down payment scraped together from 3 different jobs, was vibrating with life. My eldest, Sylvie, was there, perched nervously at the edge of her seat. Next to her was her husband, Owen, a perfectly harmless man who still wore a perplexed expression when trying to load the dishwasher. My younger daughter Claire was across from them, already discreetly calculating the calorie count of the gravy while simultaneously texting someone about a new handbag. And then there were my sweet grandchildren, Leo, 14 and glued to his screen, and Maya, 9, whose bright, inquisitive eyes were the only ones truly looking at me. I looked around the table. This was it. This was the harvest. All those endless years as a hospital ward secretary, juggling night shifts so I could be there for school plays. All the brown bag lunches I ate so I could put braces on Sylvie's crooked smile. All the times I whispered no, not right now, Elara, to myself, so I could always say yes to them. The reward for all that self-denial was the Seaview Legacy Fund. It wasn't just a number in a bank account. It was the future Arthur and I had planned, the small cottage by the rugged Maine coast where we were supposed to grow old together, watching the gulls. After he passed 5 years ago, the cottage idea faded, but the fund, that symbol of our shared sacrifice and future independence, remained solid and sacred. It was mine, my security, my dignity. I was just about to fork into the perfectly crisp skin of a roast potato when Sylvie cleared her throat. It wasn't a casual cough, it was the sharp, preparatory sound of someone who'd rehearsed a monologue. "Mom," she started, her voice unnaturally steady. "We love you, of course. And we appreciate everything," I nodded, waiting. This was the sugar on the bitter pill. But the truth is, the market has been volatile. Owen and I were sinking. The mortgage on the new house, the kids' tuition. It's overwhelming. And you, Mom, you live so simply. You don't need the complexity of managing an account that size. It's just sitting there, losing value to inflation. She paused, taking a breath, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. She was looking at the salt shaker, or maybe through it, to the numbers she saw dancing in her head. And then came the cold, calculated line, the one that erased 50 years of motherhood in 3 seconds flat. "We've decided, Mother. The Seaview Legacy Fund, it's far too valuable to sit idle in your account." I froze, my own flesh and blood. She didn't ask. She declared. "We've decided." I glanced around the table. Owen was nodding, the bobblehead husband, convinced by his wife's careful presentation. Claire, usually the most outwardly self-centered, looked slightly uncomfortable, but she was calculating too. I saw her hand hover over her phone, probably running scenarios. How many shoes does $500,000 buy? It wasn't just the money. It was the audacity, the casual, profound lack of respect. It was the realization that in their eyes, I wasn't Elara, the woman who bled for them, the widow honoring her husband's memory. I was just a custodian. An ATM that needed to be persuaded to dispense. A searing heat started in my chest. I wanted to stand up, knock over the chair and scream, "You think this is a board meeting?" You think I'm an investment you get to divest from? But I didn't. That's what they expected. The hysterical old woman. Instead, I smiled. A thin, brittle porcelain smile. It didn't reach my eyes. More gravy, Owen? I asked, my voice calm, almost too sweet. Owen jumped. Oh, no, thank you, Elara. I'm fine. The rest of the dinner was a silent theater of anxiety. They continued their planned script, filling the void with excuses. Sylvie detailed their mounting debt with the clinical precision of a lawyer presenting evidence. Claire chimed in about how my legacy would be secured if the funds were properly managed by the next generation. All valid concerns, perhaps, if they had been presented with humility and grace, not entitlement. But all I could hear was Arthur's voice from years ago, standing on a muddy patch of land by the ocean. This fund, Elara, this isn't just money. It's the final word in our freedom. Don't let anyone take that away. I finished clearing the plates, more potatoes, more gravy, more of myself as always, and retreated to the kitchen. My hands were shaking not from weakness, but from a coiled tension. The water from the tap felt ice cold against my skin. I dried the last gravy boat, placed it back in the cabinet, and flipped off the bright overhead light. In the sudden, soothing darkness, I made a decision. They needed a lesson, all right, and lessons taught with money are quickly forgotten. Lessons taught with absence, those stick. I went to bed that night with a quiet, lethal calm. If they thought the Seaview Legacy Fund was too valuable to sit idle, they were about to discover how truly valuable the custodian was. Sleep refused to visit. My mind, usually as placid as a lake at dawn, was churning like the sea in a tempest. I lay there, staring at the ceiling where Arthur's ghost occasionally kept watch, and replayed the scene. We've decided. That phrase was the hook, snagged right in my heart. Was I being selfish? The whispers of a lifetime of self-sacrifice tried to convince me. Good mothers give until it hurts. They are the eternal safety net. But then the steel in my spine stiffened. No. I'd given them the fish, the rod, and the entire tackle box. I paid for their education, their weddings, and countless bailouts from bad decisions. I'd worked myself into a state of permanent exhaustion so that they could be financially secure enough to ask me for my retirement fund. This wasn't about need. It was about habit. They had grown accustomed to my existence, functioning as a silent, invisible infrastructure supporting their entire lives. I was the electric grid, the municipal water supply, the 24/7 emergency service. And when they finally noticed the grid, it wasn't to thank it, but to demand the power plant. The anger faded, replaced by cold strategy. If I simply said no, they would argue, manipulate, or slowly erode my resolve with guilt trips and sad-eyed pleas. I needed to shock the system. I quietly slipped out of bed and padded down the hall. The kitchen light was harsh when I flipped it on, but I needed the clarity. I poured a glass of water and sat at the very table where the insult had been delivered. Arthur's words echoed again. Freedom, Elara. Don't let anyone take it. My freedom wasn't just in the money. It was in the choice to spend it. The choice to read a book instead of doing laundry. The choice to drive to the coast instead of driving Owen's kids to school. I started sketching out a plan on a notepad. Phase 1. The severance. Immediate, non-negotiable departure. I won't just leave town. I need to disappear somewhere remote. The old lighthouse keeper's retreat, 200 miles away, no Wi-Fi, spotty cell service, perfect. 2. Infrastructure collapse. They needed to feel the weight of what I managed. The fridge. Empty it completely of staples, milk, eggs, bread. Leave behind a rotting head of lettuce and a jar of pickles. No easy fixes. The bills. Collect all the mail, mortgage, utilities, insurance, and place them in a neat pile labeled urgent, due in 7 days. This would force Owen to actually call companies and understand the accounts. The keys, the spare car key, the garden shed key, the hidden key to the safe deposit box, all go with me. They are locked out of their old safety nets. Phase 2, the scramble and the suspense. This was the plot twist. I needed to ensure that even while I was gone, they had something more immediate and terrifying to worry about than simply cooking dinner. I walked into Arthur's old study. It hadn't been touched since his passing. Dust motes danced in the moonlight filtering through the blinds. I went to the large oak desk, the one with the hidden drawer. Inside, beneath a stack of old utility bills, was the genuine signed document that established the Seaview Legacy Fund. It was the only original copy. I didn't just take it. I created a diversion. I went to the basement and retrieved an old, official-looking leather-bound ledger, the one Arthur used for his garden club finances. It looked important, thick and intimidating. I took it back to the study and began writing in my finest, most cramped handwriting, account numbers, withdrawal authorizations, a cryptic reference to a conditional clause C, a final, alarming entry. Disbursement required by Friday, 5 p.m., or entire principal reverts to the Seaview Coastal Preservation Trust. I placed this fake ledger conspicuously on the center of the dining room table, exactly where Sylvie had delivered her sentence. This would drive them mad. They would believe the real fund's survival depended on them deciphering this cryptic, useless book. The pressure of a deadline would override their anger at me. The actual legacy fund document, I tucked it into the lining of my favorite travel bag, a secret weapon, a reminder that the actual power, the actual freedom, was securely in my hands. The cold tea I finished tasted like victory. I was no longer the invisible servant. I was the architect of their immediate future. I was the one holding the cards, the ledger, and the very key to the house they suddenly found so inconveniently managed. I went back to bed, feeling a spark of something almost youthful, a mixture of fear, excitement, and the kind of fierce determination you only find in a mother protecting her young, even if what she's protecting is her own peace. I slept soundly for 3 hours, woke up and started packing. The next morning, I moved with the stealth and efficiency of a seasoned spy. I brewed my own coffee, strong enough to grow hair, and sat at the kitchen table waiting. I listened to the house wake up. The clatter of cereal bowls, only 3 servings left in the box. The low hum of Owen's inevitable grumbling about the morning commute. The inevitable, "Grandma, where's the good orange juice?" from Maya. I took a deep breath, straightened the crisp linen collar of my traveling blouse, and called out, my voice cutting through the morning noise like a knife through soft butter. Family meeting. Living room now, no talking, just listening. They shuffled in, looking disheveled and mildly terrified. Sylvie tried to put on her usual dismissive air, but it crumbled when she saw the fake ledger on the dining table. It was heavy, dark, and screamed legal document. I didn't offer coffee or pastries. Just me, my plan, and a gaze that dared them to challenge me. "I want to talk about last night," I began, my voice steady, though my heart was doing a frantic jig. "About the Seaview Legacy Fund and about respect." Sylvie opened her mouth. "Mom, I raised my hand. A simple, small movement that somehow silenced her completely. "You weren't asking, Sylvie. You were declaring, you and Owen and Claire, decided that what I worked 50 years for is too valuable to sit idle and should, in fact, be immediately transferred to solve your immediate financial difficulties." I paused, letting the silence build. I noticed Leo and Maya watching from the doorway, sensing the seismic shift in the family dynamic. "The fund," I continued, pointing at the ledger, "is not a slush fund. It is not an ATM. It is my final measure of dignity and independence. And since you find my stewardship of my own assets so unsatisfactory, I have decided to give you a demonstration of what idle truly looks like." I picked up my travel bag. I have booked myself a short, necessary sabbatical. 7 days, 200 miles away, at the old lighthouse keeper's retreat. I'm taking the break I was supposed to take with Arthur. No cooking, no cleaning, no emergency runs, and certainly no financial advice. Sylvie's jaw dropped. Owen's face went the color of unbaked dough. The mortgage payment, the utility bills, the grocery shopping, the carpool schedules, and the Wi-Fi modem password, all of it is yours. The fridge is empty, the car key is with me, and the pile of mail you see on the counter is urgent. I walked over to the dark leather ledger on the table. This book contains the specific instructions for accessing and maintaining the legacy fund. I suggest you study it carefully. As you can see, I tapped the final page, there is a deadline. Friday, 5 p.m. Miss it, and the entire principal, everything Arthur and I saved, is irrevocably transferred to a charitable trust. Forever out of reach, I watched the color drain from Sylvie's face. The panic was real now, replacing the entitlement. It wasn't just about getting the money. It was about the crushing, immediate fear of losing it, perhaps to a distant conservation trust. "Mom, you can't!" "The kids!" Sylvie's voice cracked. "You're stronger than you think, darling," I said gently, but without an ounce of warmth. "Figure it out. You have 7 days to learn what managing resources truly means." I gave Maya a quick hug. She was the only one who seemed genuinely sad, not terrified, and walked out the door. The drive to the coast was liberating. It was the first time in years I hadn't felt tethered by an invisible leash. The lighthouse keeper's retreat was glorious. High on a cliff, wind-battered and silent save for the roar of the Atlantic. My room had a simple brass bed, an antique desk, and no television. The cell signal was only 2 bars if I stood next to the window facing west. For the first 2 days, the silence was agonizing. It felt unnatural, like the world had stopped spinning. Then the messages started trickling in. Day 1, 6:30 p.m., Sylvie. "Mom, the smoke alarm went off. Owen tried to make your pot roast. It looks like a fossil. Call me." I didn't call. Day 2, 8 a.m. Owen, Elara. The electric bill is astronomical. "What is time of use metering?" I've been on hold for 45 minutes. "Where is the safe key?" I texted back one word: respect. Day 3, 10 p.m. Claire. I flew back from the city. "I'm trying to decipher the ledger. What is conditional clause C? The trust deadline is making us all panic. Just tell us how to fix it." This was working. The fear of financial ruin, compounded by the frantic, impossible task of decoding the fake ledger, had completely replaced their resentment. They weren't fighting me anymore. They were fighting the clock and their own incompetence. I spent my days doing what I was supposed to have been doing for 5 years, reading history, drinking coffee that wasn't instant, and walking the jagged, empty shoreline. I thought of Arthur, and I knew he'd be laughing, a low, rumbling sound. Give them hell, Elara. I wasn't giving them hell. I was giving them reality. I imagined the scene at home, the greasy takeout containers piling up, Leo and Maya in mismatched socks, the desperate late-night huddles over the mysterious ledger, arguing about where the disbursement point was located. Claire, who valued appearances, would be furious at the chaos. Sylvie, the entitled one, would be humbled by the sheer exhaustion of managing the basics. Owen, the clueless one, would finally be learning how to use a wrench. By day 5, the texts had stopped being demanding and had become pleas. Day 5, 7 a.m. Sylvie. Mom, please. We are broken. Leo wore his gym shorts inside out to school. Owen had to call the utility company 4 times. We haven't had a cooked meal in 3 days. We get it. We are so sorry. Please come home. We need you. Not your money, you. That was the turning point. The realization that I wasn't just a financial asset, but the keystone of their entire fragile structure. I felt the ice around my heart finally begin to melt, replaced by a weary sort of satisfaction. I texted back, "I'll be home Sunday evening." Prepare to talk. I tucked the Real Legacy Fund document deeper into my bag. The lesson was learned. Now came the reckoning. I drove back on Sunday, the late afternoon sun casting long, judgmental shadows. As I pulled up the driveway, I didn't see my house. I saw a crime scene. The lawn, usually immaculate, was overgrown. A bicycle lay abandoned on its side. Inside the window, I could see what looked suspiciously like a pile of unwashed clothes forming a small textile volcano in the middle of the living room. I braced myself and opened the front door. The smell of desperation, a mixture of burnt toast, stale pizza, and unwashed gym socks, hit me first. The family was huddled in the kitchen, exhausted and defeated. Owen was trying miserably to sweep up a spill with a broom that looked like it had quit weeks ago. Claire was sitting on a stool, head in hands, her usually perfect hair a wreck. Sylvie looked like she'd aged 10 years. When they saw me, there was a collective sigh of relief, followed by a rush. Sylvie was the first to reach me. She didn't speak. She just collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably, the kind of deep, ragged crying that comes from sheer continuous stress. "Mom, I'm so sorry, she choked out, her words muffled by my shoulder. I'm so sorry. We were awful. We took you for granted. We thought you just did things. I didn't know how the insurance worked. I didn't know the kids needed a new lunch code. I didn't know how much work everything was. Owen, looking sheepish and strangely proud of his slightly pink laundry pile, nodded emphatically. Elara, I spent 6 hours on hold with the bank trying to figure out if that ledger was real. We were terrified of the deadline. And honestly, I finally had to cook an egg, and I realized I don't know how to boil water without burning it. Even Claire, the most guarded of all, stood up and smoothed her skirt. I feel terrible, Mom. We were calculating, and it was disrespectful. That fund is your security. It's your victory lap. It wasn't ours to discuss, much less demand. We were selfish and blind. Leo and Maya rushed in, not asking about the Wi-Fi, but just clutching my hands. Grandma, we missed your cookies, Maya whispered. And I felt the last of my resolve crumble into maternal tenderness. I hugged them all, letting the tension bleed out of the room. I heard you, I said finally, holding Sylvie by the shoulders and making her look me in the eye. I heard the words, and I heard the sincerity. And I want you to know this. I didn't leave to punish you. I left to protect myself. I walked over to the dining room table, picking up the heavy, fake ledger. I opened it and showed them the pages full of nonsensical figures and the final, alarming deadline. This, I said, dropping the ledger into the recycling bin, is just Arthur's old garden club expense book. The Seaview Legacy Fund was never at risk of going to a trust. The only thing at risk was my willingness to ever trust you again. The looks on their faces were a complex mixture of relief, embarrassment, and awe. I laid the law down then and there, standing over the wreckage of my kitchen, my security, the fund, the dignity Arthur and I earned. It stays with me, every cent. I will use it for the travel, the quiet mornings, and the books I put off for 50 years. I will still love you. I will still help you. But the system is changing. I pointed at the pile of bills on the counter. Owen, you manage the finances. Sylvie, you handle the domestic logistics and the carpool. Claire, you help them structure a monthly budget. And the children pitch in, starting with a rigorous sanitation of that laundry pile. They agreed. They didn't just agree. They swore an oath. Over the next few weeks, the difference was profound. The house didn't instantly become spotless, but it became a team effort. Sylvie learned to cook and even asked for my recipes. Owen, surprisingly, found a talent for budgeting and managed to shave hundreds off the utility bills. Claire started volunteering at the local community center instead of just shopping. I had my kitchen back. More importantly, I had my identity back. I was no longer an invisible service provider. I was Elara, the matriarch, whose presence was sought and whose wisdom was valued. I still dip into the Seaview Legacy Fund, not to bail anyone out, but to book a flight to see old friends, or to buy a first edition book I've always wanted. And yes, I sometimes treat Leo and Maya to a trip to the beach, where I tell them stories of their grandfather, teaching them that hard work isn't about the money you earn, but the freedom it buys. My heart is full. I got my respect, my peace of mind, and the golden years I earned. And as for my family, they learned the hardest, most necessary lesson. Sometimes, the most valuable thing you can lose is the person you take for granted.